Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our very first Health webinar of this season, of this year. We're very excited to be able to welcome each and every one of you into this virtual space. And on behalf of Dr. Jesse Wilson and the Pelt Committee, we want to welcome each and every one of you. My name is Orville Brissett. I serve as the pastor of the Germantown Seventh-day Adventist Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We welcome you to what will be an exciting time of enrichment, a time of empowerment, and we thank God for you making the time to join us today. Just want to share a few key things that will be of import to you. Number one, we are excited to um, have PELC taking place December 5 through 8 in Huntsville, Alabama at the Oakwood University Church. PELC is always a tremendous time of worship, of word, of fellowship. And so we're looking forward to seeing each and every one of you in Huntsville, December 5 through 8. Registration will begin in August. And so you want to take care of that to make sure that you have your arrangements, your accommodations taken care of. Allow me a brief moment to acknowledge on behalf of the Office of Regional Conference Ministries and the PELC Committee. I want to just take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Elder Henry Fordham and his wife Sharon. As many of you have heard that they passed away on Sunday. We are continuing to extend our love, our prayers, and our support to the immediate family, to the extended family, to the Allegheny East Conference family, and to those who loved them dearly. We continue to pray and ask God for comfort. We have a wonderful and engaging lineup that is of presenters for you today. And so without further ado, again, welcome. I want to turn it over to the hands of our host for this webinar, Pastor Nathaniel Drew, the senior pastor of the Breath of Life Seventh-day Adventist Church in Memphis, Tennessee. God bless you all. Have a great afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, wherever you are viewing this from, be it Facebook or YouTube, whether you're watching live right now or you're going to tune in sometime later. We just want to say good afternoon. And I appreciate my brother, Pastor Orville Brissett, for the words that he opened us up with, and for the introduction of me as well. For those of you who might not know, I'm excited to be here, and I'm welcoming everyone to this PELC webinar, this broadcast that is so important. I just believe that there's going to be a lot of stuff that's shared today that is going to prove to be a blessing to everyone who is tuned in. To all those who are behind the scenes right now, making all this possible, the PELC committee, the PELC team, we say thank you, and we're grateful just to be here. And so, because Pastor Orville mentioned it, and maybe you saw the flyer yourself, that today the topic or the focus that we'll be dealing with for the next few moments that we have this afternoon is life after the snap, a look at post-pandemic mental health. Now, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be honest with you all. When I first heard or read the first part of that title, I was thinking to myself, I have no idea what a snap has to do with post-pandemic or with mental health. They're talking about Snapchat. They're talking about something else. I had no idea. And thankfully, my man, Pastor Damon Hendrickson, kind of schooled me on where this idea of the snap came from. I love movies, but I'm not a superhero movie fan. I'm sorry. Please don't fuss me out in the comment section. But for those of you who are, then I'm sure that you got this analogy that I learned came from the Avengers series when Thanos would snap and half civilization would be wiped out. And the reason why this analogy becomes so pertinent and important to what we're dealing with right now is because you don't need me to remind you that we have dealt with a worldwide snap, as it were, a worldwide wipe out, where we have seen COVID-19 wipe out lives. We have seen COVID-19 wipe out freedoms that we're used to engaging in-person gatherings and weddings, peace, and even the sanity of our very minds. And right now, as we are on the verge, and we know this thing is not over yet, it's far from over, but right now, as we are on the verge of considering what reintegration looks like on so many different levels, be it business and in the marketplace, and even in our very churches, we want to just come together and focus on the effects of mental health as it pertains to reintegration. And so as we seek this restart, we're doing so with this very important panel. And I'm so excited today because we have a phenomenal, and when I say phenomenal, I mean that in every sense of the word, a phenomenal group of panelists who are experienced and knowledgeable in their own right, who are going to be shedding some light for us on this important topic. And so because my mother raised me to be a gentleman and she'd have it no other way, I'm going to start with the beautiful lady that we have on our panel, who is making us all look that much better. And that is Chaplain Simona Mills Pitcher. And so she is here with us today. I've had the opportunity to meet her on a number of occasions, visiting the island of Bermuda. Chaplain Pitcher, would you just share a few words with our guest today?
Hi, everyone. I am really glad to be here. Like you said, I am a Brooklyn girl, but someone had to come out to Bermuda, and I took the call. Right? I did say I do. That's how I got here. I married my husband, who's Bermudian, but it's been a pleasure. I am out here working at Bermuda Institute in the capacity of chaplain and just navigating. I also teach a little bit. I'm just navigating all of what's happening out here, but I'm just really glad to be here. Shout out to all those in Brooklyn, but Bermuda is beautiful. I'll save some sunshine for you.
Yeah, we know your hands are tied having you there in Bermuda.
Yeah,
you know. Like here, but we all have our lot in life, so there you go. But it's so good to have you on here, Chaplain. We look forward to hearing from you.
Okay.
Secondly, I want to bring on to the screen our second panelist, who is a brother, a friend of mine, a mentor who I've learned so much from. And it's kind of odd because I'm used to sitting on a panel with him being the host, and now it's the other way around. But I want to introduce to some and reintroduce to others, Dr. David Defoe.
Nate, how you doing, man?
Good to see you, man.
Likewise, brother.
It's good to be a few words of greeting with our guest today.
So we're here to talk about mental health. Of course, I'm the Relationship Ministries Director for the Allegheny East Conference, and you all just pray for our conference through what the pain we're going through with the loss of our shepherd and his wife. But apart from being the Relationship Ministries Director, which is family, men's, singles, mental health, I also am a licensed therapist. I operate a group practice here in Laurel, Maryland. Yeah. And I enjoy, talking about mental health.
It is so good to have you here. I cannot wait, for one, to hear the insight that we get from you as well. It's good to have you here, bro. And then last but not least, our pillar of wisdom that we have here on our panel with us, who has a wealth of knowledge, years, and experience. We are happy to round out this wonderful group of panelists with Chaplain Paul Anderson. Chaplain, it is good to have you on here this afternoon. Can you share a few words with our guest?
Thank you, Nathaniel. Your introduction just reminded me of what a doctor told me years ago when I was complaining about backache and knee ache and all that stuff. And he said, what you're experiencing is the result of chronological stratification. You were about that smooth in calling me old.
Oh, no way, no how, man. No way, no how.
Wow.
But it is good to have all three of you on here today. As a mental health specialist myself, it brings me great joy that we are having this conversation. And there are so many different conversations we could be having right now, but there aren't too many that could be argued are more essential and more important than some of the things that we're going to talk about today. When we think about this idea of not just reintegration, but just thinking about from a mental component, what people have gone through over the last year and a half or so, and then what will continue to be experienced as we go forward. We want to address some of those things right now. Before we get into our first question, for those of you who are viewing from online, you may have questions or such that you want to throw into the ring. We do have some questions we want to ask ourselves. But if you do have a question, a comment, you can feel free to type that in the comment section, and we'll do our best to address some of them. Won't be able to get to all of them. We only have a short amount of time, so please don't crucify me if we don't get to yours, but we will do our very best. And so let's go right ahead and jump into question number one. This will really go to anyone who has any input to share on it. Feel free to share from your expertise. Don't feel confined, and we'll keep it moving along just like that. So we'll start off with this question. In your expertise and opinion, why is mental health, this idea of mental health, why is that something that we should be concerned with post-pandemic, right? A lot of people have their minds fixed on so many other things post-pandemic, traveling freely, not having to worry about some of these, restrictions that we have right now. But why is mental health something that we should be concerned about post-pandemic?
Well, I'll jump in and I'll start from just kind of looking at my students and why mental health is something that we really need to be focusing on. We move and we breathe and we act from our mental capacities. Every decision we make, every move we make happens here first, mentally. If this is not right, everything that follows from whatever happens in here doesn't work according to plan. And I'm finding, just watching some of my students, even watching my colleagues, watching everybody else around me in ministry, just watching that when your mental psyche is just not right, then everything just does not flow out the way it is. And we don't talk about it. Mental health is for those who are on medication, those who are institutionalized, those who are in spaces where they are clearly labeled that way. But what Corona has taught us, this whole pandemic has taught us, is that we all have to pay attention to our mental health. I mean, I can't go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to play basketball and I haven't touched the ball in a minute and expect to just hit winning shots all the time. It's rusty. I can't, if I'm not working that out, I'm going to lose it. So if we're not really looking at the health of our mental psyche, then after a while we will lose it. And Corona showed us how we have lost even just the reality of our situations have become so skewed that we don't even, some of us are just lost. We're just stuck standing still, and not because we want to, but because we don't know where to go next. And that's mental health. If we're not touching that, I'm just glad we're talking about it. So that's just my sense on it.
Man, Chaplain, you said a whole lot right there. And I think one thing that kind of comes from that is this idea of a devaluing of mental health. That's key. Dr. Defoe, seemed like you were about to chime in with something.
Yeah, I think we get into the weeds sometimes when we try to mental health from just our natural health and well-being. Adventists, or as Adventists, we're supposed to have a health message. Well, how do we promulgate good health without good mental health? There is a component, mind, body, and spirit. The challenge with the church, which has historically been, is that we can address the spirit, we can address the body physically, but we oftentimes will chalk up the things that happen in the mental space to something that's demonic or something beyond our understanding, because none of us realize, or we don't like to teach the fact that we all have mental health. Mental health is something we all have. Our ability to cope, deal with life's exigencies, walk through decision-making is our mental health, our mental well-being. We all have that. And for us to look at mental health as just people who have mental health challenges, we like to separate people who have just a need to have emotional stability from individuals who may be suffering with a mental illness. Well, you don't say, well, we don't touch health because, we don't want to talk to people with cancer, but we don't talk to people who just need to learn how to eat right, live right, breathe, exercise, whatever the start things are. I'm fat, I don't do that. So whatever those start things is that they used to teach us, we tell people you can do those things. Well, mental health is the same, and we have to look at mental health as just regular health.
If I could jump in, I agree with what both have said. And a part of mental health is maturing. And part of maturing is going through rites of passage, celebrations of those rites, and adjusting to the shifts in life. Since March last year, the world has had a shift. It's almost tectonic, an earthquake in culture. And it has been disrupting to the economy, to social norms. And if we don't figure out how to make the adjustments, then it's like when I was young, I learned how to drive on a car with a standard shift. And you had to push the clutch in to shift into first gear to get started, and then second, third, and fourth. If you didn't push the clutch, you'd be grinding your gears. And so many of us have been grinding in an unhealthy way through the course of this pandemic. Good mental health is the clutch to get us back in gear.
Wow! Listen, what a start! What a start to this panel discussion. You all seem to say a lot of good stuff. You can see the comments that are being shared. Said a lot of good stuff that all seem to coincide with one another. Now, someone who is on the opposite side of the spectrum, and when I mention that, I'm speaking in reference to those that might, for whatever reason, devalue mental health. It's not that big of a deal. Just pray about it. And it becomes hard sometimes, just playing devil's advocate, to pay respect to something that is not easy to see from an eye perspective, right? I can see if you break your leg and you have a cast on. I can see if you have the coronavirus and you're going through the physical ailments of being sick. It can become difficult sometimes to see mental health in action. And because of that, it can make it difficult to pay it the respect, as it were, that should be afforded to it. My question in that regard is this: what are some of the mental health effects that we are seeing as a result of the pandemic? What are we seeing? What are some of those effects that we're seeing as a result of the pandemic?
Go on. No, age before beauty, man.
Well, thank you. I've seen personally, as well as professionally, a word I'm going to coin is stuckness, because we are in this loop, and it's like Groundhog Day all over again. And even though if we've not been affected by COVID and are not having the long haulers fog, there's still this community sense of what's next? Where do we go from here? When is the next bomb going to hit? It's like another World War II analogy. When Germany was bombing Great Britain, people were dying, but nobody knew where the next bomb was going to hit. So they kept trying to move and do the norm, but many of them were shell-shocked or traumatized. And even to people who are still alive from that era, they have the invisible wound of warped or broken mental health.
So with that also, one thing that we're seeing is we are, of course, seeing a lot of grief. And the grief that we're seeing is not just the grief that's easy to see, which is the grief of the loss of the amalgamation of people that we've lost during this time, right? It's the grief that deals with the loss of normalcy. It's the grief that my life has now changed. I've been able to keep myself balanced and deal with a miasma of pain by being able to access a certain level of coping mechanisms. Well, now those coping mechanisms were instantaneously changed. I couldn't go on vacation if I liked to get away. I couldn't go to the gym if I liked to exert some energy, right? So now what means of coping could I have? And so one thing we see with people, especially who are grieving, and there's a term that was coined entitled disenfranchised grief that we put aside because we don't recognize it or don't see it, right? One of the things that we know about disenfranchised grief is it looks the same way like depression looks. It presents the same way anxiety presents. It presents in isolation. It presents in somatic symptoms, like tremors and the inability to sleep. It presents in not being able to engage in the same activities we used to because they're not available to us, but also we're too afraid to go out and engage in them, right? And so the grief begins to look like all these other mental health conditions. And so for some things, it's making sure that we put the right language with it, giving people the space to talk about what it is that they feel so that they can explore it, so they don't think, oh, you know what, I've sunk into depression in the middle of COVID, or I've sunk into these anxiety-induced symptoms, when really people are grieving the fact that they can't access the same coping strategies that they used to in order to keep themselves balanced. And so that's one of the things that has definitely contributed. The fact that people can't, especially Black people, can't take their hips into a church and sit down. And so you compound the fact that we're losing people, but yet as a group, we can't get together for our conclusionary rituals in community like we always used to. And so now we're not able even to complete the losses in appropriate ways. Zoom don't work for funerals.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's difficult. And so this is the space that the church has to begin to navigate and operate in as we come back together. And I don't want to get ahead, so I'll just stop there.
Well, I want to
Chaplain, before you come in, Chaplain Pitcher, I want to mention, and I appreciate our team putting it on the screen. I wanted to emphasize the very quote we see on the screen. DeAndrea Jackson, Chaplain Anderson's daughter, said, "Reintegration anxiety, social anxiety, continued social isolation, depression, traumatic grief." For those who might be asking the question, what does it look like for my mental health to be suffering during a time like this? Perfect snapshot. Chaplain Pitcher.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you, DeAndrea. And I absolutely love that, because what I'm seeing amongst the younger generation as well is something called, I call it CC, COVID cave. So one time someone said, they were talking about some kind of relationship they were in. I'm just listening to my kids and they're like, you better COVID cave that. In other words, COVID is different. Put that bad boy in a cave. We don't even know what it looks like. We're going in a hole, and we're in this COVID hole, and we're never getting out. And that has been just some of the vernacular that some of our kids are using, the students are using, the youth. Another thing that I found, and I love that stuckedness, that coined term. I absolutely love that. Oh,
thank you.
Okay, so all right, we're here. Did you guys lose me, or we're good?
We're good.
We're good.
Okay, yeah. So what I love about that is you have this complacency that's happening. The world is never going to be different. I know my son is 7 years old, and he said, "Mommy, when is Corona going to be over?" I was like, "Baby, it's not over. It's never going to be over." "Well, when are we going to be able to do this?" I said, "Well, sweetie, we're going to have to find new ways to do it." And he stomps off saying, "I hate Corona. I hate it." And then he's able to say that. But I have my older students who just don't understand that this thing is real. And so they'll test the waters, and some of them will do things that they would never have done before. They're so desperate to just get together and hang out with each other that they're breaking curfew laws or whatever it is just to say hi. They are now becoming so involved with what is happening on the internet that they no longer know how to speak. I'm looking at writing assignments for some of my students. I'm like, why is LOL up there? Oh, I was laughing out loud. No. Nah. And this is what's happening. The reality is they're forgetting how to write. They're forgetting how to even properly exist. They're forgetting everything. They sleep more. day is night, night is day. They're just these are the things. I'm just looking at our kids who are now just deer in headlights with this whole Corona cave. They're standing in a hole and they don't even know how to get out of it. And that's the scariest part for me. That's what I'm seeing the most. The grief, yeah, that is real. But we don't even know how to deal with grief of death. Think about it. How do you explain to an elementary kid or a high school child or college kid about death and somebody you lost and you lost your mother? How do you navigate that? Well, now add COVID to that. Now add the whole pandemic to that. They don't know how to navigate the steps of grief. It's not normal. They don't know what to do. And that's what I'm seeing. That's what's scary.
Could I
go right ahead.
Here, based on what Simona and David have said, in light of all of these things, I think we need to get some church futurists impaneled to talk about, since we know that life after this snap is not going to be what it was, what kinds of things can we create in the community and the culture to help us make these transitions and to help us grow new traditions and sufficient rites of passage for our funerals, our weddings, our celebrations and graduations that are meaningful. The first funeral, COVID funeral that we were associated with was a drive-by. 700 cars going by to say hi and offer condolences. That became a norm, drive-by graduations. But where do we go from here? And without clarity and direction, we wander in our grief.
Yeah.
Excellent point. I want to shift gears for a moment, and to that point, Shelvin Anderson, which is so important. I'm grateful, I'm sure you all have seen the point on the screen, that is what the Pell Committee is going to focus on panel-wise in the next webinar. So we're so happy to see that is going to be taken care of and not kind of be allowed to fall through the cracks. Simona, you brought up such excellent points in regards. It was actually where I was going to go next. I'm so grateful that you did, because a lot of times when we talk about the difficulty of the pandemic, the demographic that often gets pushed to the back of the room are our children. I have 2 daughters. You have children. David has children. Chaplain Anderson has children. And we have seen that especially school-aged children have been greatly impacted by this pandemic. Not only is school different, right? But much like you said, breaking curfew just to say hi. It's not that we're trying to do anything bad. We just miss interaction. And so a lot of times we think that mental health is only relegated to adults. That children can't experience mental health, right? They're just acting up and being bad, right? And it's easy to label them instead of recognizing what's going on. Can you all share some information for the parents that may be viewing this? Aunties, uncles, grandparents who may be guardians who are watching their children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews act in ways in their minds that are so uncharacteristic of how they normally act and respond. And they're thinking, what do I do with them? Like, I don't know what to do. Can you all share some information on that?
Well, I'll pop in and then I'll pop out and have everyone else talk about it. But the whole idea of when you're on an airplane, you put your stuff on first and then deal with the children, put their things together. I think parents especially, we need to do that. You need to see when your child does something, you're like, didn't I tell you again? Stop doing that. Stop doing that. In the midst of this pandemic, you need to stop and look at what they're doing and then think why they're doing it. I have so many students that are so frustrated with being in their house. And here in Bermuda was worse. We were on lockdown, as in stay at home, don't go, not a space. Or we had authorities on the streets stopping you. You could not go anywhere. You couldn't even go visit grandma two houses down because that's not your bubble. So what you had now were people forced to be in each other's space. But what happened with the youth, they're already there. Remember, they were always on the internet. They were always Snapchatting. So they didn't feel it as quickly as we did. See, the world snapped. Yeah, the kids didn't really snap as quickly, right? They didn't feel the immediateness. They were like, wait, no school? Yes. They were excited. It's like, oh, we're home. Wait, I can just be in my bed. Although my child was not. He had to be in his uniform, and that's another story. But you had celebration in this space of the young people. And so then parents were trying to catch it and then being annoyed at some of the kids, what the kids were doing, but they've been always doing it. So the first thing is take a check, parents especially, caretakers, anybody, take a check on you first. Why are you reacting to what they're doing? Have they not been doing that all the time? And now you're just seeing it because now you're home, or now you're stuck, or now life for you has snapped, and now you're looking at some place to put that anger. Stop before you were about to address your children or the young people around you, and think about, why are you even engaging them in that manner? That's one. Then number two for me is, now that they're like, wait a minute, this is not a joke, this is real. Wait, we can't graduate. I can't walk down an aisle and graduate. I can't do this. I can't. Now they're beginning to snap harder. And so now what you're having is behavior is being changed. They're now seeing everything that they shouldn't see. If you're having conversation about stuff, now they're in your space. You got to either talk in code, and they're now having to hear things that they didn't always hear in an adult world. And now they're processing it. And kids are literal. Even young people, even college age, they're literal. Well, you said we're going to go outside after. Yeah, well, it's raining, but you said we're going to go outside. We have to now guard our mouths. Be careful what it is that you're telling your kids. Be careful what you're telling them they can and cannot do, because they are so literal in this whole pandemic that they're now saying, but you said, I'm confused. And then you're going to have really bad interaction happening if you're not staying true to your words. So check yourself first before you even try to engage the young people, because they're looking, magnifying glasses are all out, and they're looking at everything even more so. You could have gotten away with it before the pandemic, not anymore.
Interesting. Any other input from our panelists on that particular subject?
Well, I have to admit that my experience with children extends to my own, and I realize that I'm at a loss oftentimes of what to do. But one thing I do know is that children engage in learned behavior, and if you don't like your child's learned behavior, first look for a solution in the mirror. Because one thing I do know is that when children come to therapy, more often than not, it's the parents we need to speak with, not the children. There's a reason the Bible says the sins of the father are passed on to the third and fourth generation. It's because the next child learns it generationally. So, that's one of the first things. Take a look in the mirror, find out what's going on. But children are also more resilient than we are. That's why they've adjusted to this new normal. And if you can look at what the children do, and the children are going through during this pandemic, and how they've adjusted their learning style, even though it's not as effective for some of them, even though, how they've adjusted their communication style, their socialization, you can take a gauge as to what the church may need to do to shift their focus based off how the children have shifted their resiliency with this thing. Right? The children can teach us and educate us on what mechanisms we need to put in place in order to reach not only future generations, but children like Deandra said, or like people like Deandra said, who have reintegration anxiety. I think that's what she called it, the good doctor. We have to figure out mechanisms to deal with that. But our children are more resilient than we give them credit for. And a part of our care of them has to be the looking in the mirror at ourselves. Well, one, where did they learn it? Did they learn it from me? Did it come from something that I passed down to them? Whatever it is, give them a little bit more grace and space to be themselves, and realize you can't really discipline, educate yourself out of your kids, man. So what you gave them is what you gave them. So look first in the mirror.
I would say that the emotional, spiritual, behavioral health of children, they are fluid, but as they age, the fluid begins to congeal and gel, and it will take on the form of the crucible in which it is placed. And the parents form that crucible. Where you do Jello, it'll take on the shape of whatever mold you put it in.
Mm.
The emotional, behavioral, and spiritual health of children is similar.
Yeah, Nate, can I just talk to Judy Marshall with her question about what are some strategies that we can apply to younger children? Yeah, I would say this. I love what has just been said, looking in the mirror and stuff, and that's what I do daily. But here's something practical that I've done with the younger children. The younger children do not feel it as much as I'd say high school age children, right? Because high school age children want to be with their friends. The younger ones just want to be up under mommy and daddy, right? 7, 8, they just kind of want to be up under mommy and daddy, do what they're doing, help, that kind of stuff. So if we're talking that kind of age, Judy, then what I would suggest is that you take less focus, stop focusing on Corona. We can't go because Corona. We can't go because of this. Can't go because of Corona. Can't Corona. Take that off. Get them a little board or something. What are you grateful for today? Yeah, you can say, what are some of the things that Corona has done that was helpful? Well, we get to spend time. Now we have game night because of it. Now we have this. Try to, with your younger kids, be grateful. What are you grateful for in this new season? And I stopped using the new normal. I just say normal. I stopped telling the kids, this is the new normal now. I stopped using new normal. That I take that out of my vocabulary. And so with the younger kids, I laugh more, play more with them. They just don't realize that the world has changed in the manner that it's changed. So I'm not saying pull the wool over their eyes, but be more fun. Stop getting that deadline done. Stop. The younger kids don't understand that your work has quadrupled because that you now have to stay at home, you now have to do this. They don't understand that. They just know that mommy snapped at me again because I went in the fridge for the 7th time for a snack. Mercy, I don't know about anybody else, but this groceries, mercy. But you gotta do something. And if they want that many snacks, watch their behavior and address it. So my son wanted snacks. I was like, okay, you know what we're gonna do? We're going to make lunch. So he had the same thing I do for school. Oh, I made lunch and snacks and did fun stuff, looked up things online and said, hey, what do you want to eat next time? Or I took the time. Now, mind you, was my work piling up? Yes, it was. Did I need to do, there were things I need to do? Yeah. So what I did was went to sleep with him and got up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and did everything I needed to do. Young children do not understand. Not right now. No, I'm busy. No, they don't understand that. And you keep doing that to them, and they will not recover. They're resilient, but they will not recover in a manner that God ordained them to be. And that's what I think, Judy, if that helps you, try to be more hands-on with your younger children. Try to show them that you hug them for no reason. Go get a balloon with water in it and throw it on them and then run. The fun will,
in the ministry of time.
I know, yeah.
Get that back. Okay, so I want to shift gears, and I'm being mindful of the time as well, shift gears now to the context of reintegration as it pertains to our churches. Now, I know it's not, we're not opening back up in most places with 100% capacity. There are parameters set in place, guidelines sitting at 6 feet distance, whatever kind of stipulations the individual churches have in place. We've at least gotten to a point where churches have begun to reopen, where in-person worship gatherings have taken place, so we can actually see each other for those who choose in a physical sense and not just on Zoom. And those have their own benefits and complications all their own. But I wanted to focus on a question that we got from one of our viewers, Leonardo Raming, who said this: how do you deal with pastors who think they are okay, however their actions show that they are not mentally well? And before you chime in, I think a lot of time is normally spent on what kind of, we actually have a question to that effect. What kind of support can we offer for church members who struggle with mental health issues? What are some parameters we can put in place? Some things we can do to help our members, right? But I appreciate Leonardo's question because it focuses on the leadership because we have leadership who struggle with mental health, and we preach it, we teach it, we proclaim it, we say what you should do, and a lot of us are struggling in our own right and are too proud in many instances to say something. So how do we deal with pastors who think they're okay, but they're not okay after the snap?
I think part of that is leadership and relationship. If the church member recognizes that the pastor has some imbalances, obviously the first approach would be to have a gentle conversation, try to probe the circumstance, because pastors have a lot of stress, and they don't really teach you in seminary how to deal with the stress of pastoring a church. But then too, the truth is a lot of us are warped, and that's why we're in the ministry, and that manifests itself. So first, a conversation with the individual. Subsequently, if the imbalance becomes even more evident, then with leadership, and the ministerial director or the conference president may be able to add some strength to the recommendation that the individual, the pastor who is demonstrating some imbalance, go to get some help with therapists like David or others who can help him or her explore their upbringing, their dramas, their traumas, why they respond the way they do, and then perhaps help build some different structures into the way they approach life. Would you agree, Dave?
Absolutely. And I would suggest, that we first understand how it is that we in our local church treat people who are broken, treat people who have needs. Imagine how you treat the person off the street who comes in with a challenge. If I am the leader and I see you treat those whom Christ gives us who come in the back door, if you treat them that way, well, how would you treat me if me in the front tell you that I have a challenge too? So does the environment exist for a pastor to say to a congregation, I'm not doing okay? And then you all handle that as if this isn't a spiritual problem, or this isn't something that's indicative of, okay, well, time for a pastoral move, but we take care of the pastor in that local space, right? Okay, the second thing is this, right? There is a need for some people or for some pastors to have the approval of their members, where I can't be vulnerable. I can't show you, yes, we're all wounded healers for a reason, but I can't show you my wounds because I don't feel like you can handle them. I feel like I'm supposed to put myself on a pedestal. And this is where friendship among clergy has to come into play, where maybe perhaps the pastor, the place for you, if you see a pastor with a problem, is not for you and the elders and for someone else to call up the conference or to go and talk to the pastor, but find a local pastor in your pastor's district, in the neighborhood that you know is a friend with your pastor. Call the other pastor on the phone and say, you know what, I'm noticing these things about my pastor. Could you possibly go and maybe speak with my pastor and see if he needs some help or he needs some assistance? Don't spread it. Don't talk about it. Don't spread rumors about it. Don't go to his wife, his kids, or a husband, whatever it is, right? Treat your pastor as if they're human, because they are. The only reason why they're the pastor is because God took them in their more serious problems and their more brokenness and wanted them to use that brokenness to help somebody else out. We're not pastors because we perfect. We pastors probably because we broken and God couldn't save us if he didn't give us some religious responsibility. So understanding that and realizing that, making sure that we create the space and environment, not only for those people who come into our doors with brokenness, who need help, who need a safe place to say that I'm not okay, but from the pulpit to the back door, we have to be able to say, you know what, I'm not okay. And it be perfectly fine, because if you're coming to church, you shouldn't be okay, because we're all in need of something. And that's what we need to do to create safe spaces in our church, not only for the pastors, but also for the people who come in off the street.
Well, I like that, and I'm gonna call this approach, change it just a bit, and say the authenticity in action, AA. We do know that mental health from the leaders down. We know the leaders as a pastor, as a chaplain. That's a lot on your head, leading out other people who are broken, right? And I call it spiritual injury. There's a lot of spiritual injury in our churches. And that's for another day. But when you look at it, I think we can help in a different approach. So follow me here. Let's not leave no man left behind. What does that mean in this theme? Zoom should not be left behind. Now, people are like, yeah, we're back in church. Forget Zoom. We don't need that. Forget StreamYard. We don't need that. There are some people who, for the first time ever, have been enjoying church. When we are talking about, because the question originally was talking about reintegrating, how do we reintegrate? We're going back into churches, right? So there's some people who for 2 years have been in church because church came to them. Mm-hmm. Do not leave them behind.
Amen.
Oh my.
There are some young people who got for the first time to do intercessory prayer because they did Zoom. There are some leaders who did not know how to work Zoom or StreamYard or anything else and had their sons or their kids or their cousins or their nephews doing it and say, yo, how you do this? Okay, you have these masterminds that have been doing productions. And now that we're back in church, we don't need y'all. We're back to how we are. If you want the mental health of your leaders to be better, then do not leave the people who you leaned on behind. Because if we integrate them that way, so let's say Sabbath school now doesn't have to be the way it was. Why not have a separate production? You're in church. Those who can afford to go into church, fine. Why not have the children run the cameras? Let the children do and I'm talking young. My son can sit in front of the camera and follow instructions and move the camera according. He's working on that. We're working on him on doing that now. Why can't we now do things and not leave people behind? That is the biggest that we're gonna and give the pastors some, ease them up. Where as pastors, there's some things that we just shouldn't have to think about. As leaders, there's just some things you shouldn't have to think about. Now that we're all have been activated to do stuff, don't leave people behind. That if you want to reintegrate properly, then there's some things we just can't do like we used to in church. Now we're back to You cannot do church the way you did it before. Mm-hmm. That's I'm hoping, maybe come up with some production moments, and then church was an hour long in Zoom. Well, for most of them, because they have been 2 or 3 hour long, but church has been an hour long or an hour and a half of different things happening. Let's not go back to the 3 hour services and the 5 hour services. Let's do something different so that the young people can have church. Right now, I have children's church from 2 to 3 p.m. I'm working with Pastor Quinones and we're doing church from 2 to 3 and we get a lot done in that. So 2 to 3. And that's because
listen, I think if we don't you're talking so much truth. I think if Dave is not allowed to get in here, he's gonna burst. Dave, what you got, man?
But it's not just for the members. There are some of us pastors who prefer to get up and preach on Zoom because that means I could go and enjoy, get this, Sabbath rest as a pastor. I started taking naps. Come on, man. You don't understand, right? So it's not just
Jesus took a nap. Show them your shirt.
It's just not the members. There's some of us who don't want to go back to whatever that stuff was, man, because it wasn't scratching where many of us itch anyway. Some of us did it because we got paid to do it. So what this has presented us with an opportunity to do something that God can be happy with, can be pleased. Otherwise, if we go back to normal, what lesson do we have to learn again? Right? We have to take something to learn from this. We recognize we can get more people involved. We realize that we can have more time on the Sabbath, not doing religion, but being in relationship. Come on, let me go before I lose my job, man. Let me just be quiet.
This is futurism.
This is futurism at work. At work. No, this is golden, right? Because essentially what I'm hearing, and I'm sure our viewers are listening as well, what I'm hearing is, that the antidote to what we're dealing with from a mental health standpoint as it pertains to this pandemic cannot simply be solved with reintegration in terms of just opening churches back up and going back to church. Right? So we're going to essentially walk right back into the same things, the same trauma, the same troubles, the same mess, the same illegitimate ways of doing things that we've always done it. And so if something doesn't change, right, that's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Okay, so let me come to this, because I know we're coming to the end of this discussion. Unfortunately, listen, I know you all have been having a good time. I've been having a good time listening. We want to shift to this very important hot button topic known as the vaccination. Now, keep in mind that this is not to debate whether you support the vaccine or whether you don't support the vaccine. That's a different panel discussion for a different day. That's not the intention with this question. But I think it's safe to say that many people in communities of color are hesitant, I'll use that word, are hesitant to take the vaccine, given the history of people of color in this country as it pertains to health and to mental health, right? And you can talk about different experiments and studies and tests that have been done that has had people of color specifically on the back end or the downside of what has taken place. So there's a distrust especially in this country as it pertains to communities of color. And so now we have this vaccine and we see the publicity, we see what we're being told, make sure you get it, it's in your best interest. This will be the key to opening the world back up, life after the snap, right? And there are a lot of people who are hesitant and determined not to do it. From a mental health perspective, how can mental health and the perspective of mental health at least help to inform us on how to navigate congregations and people who are split in terms of vaccination? Not determining what's right and what's wrong, but how can our understanding of mental health and the history of Black and brown people in this country and the distrust that exists, how can our mental health understanding inform the hesitancy in terms of the vaccination?
I'll jump in first and say this, quite simple. Let's take the literal route and say why. Well, why are we hesitant? What are some of the reasons why we are, what are some of the reasons why we have mistrust? I know the generation that I'm around, they don't understand the why. And so maybe in order to help with the mental health capacity of this big, huge subject around vaccination to be or not to be, helping generations understand the why without taking this route. Well, back in my day, Tuskegee, back in my day, don't do it that way. Do it this way. Here's why we are afraid. Use words that are understandable. And so that we can actually deal with the mental capacity of what's happening. Our churches are full of different levels of generations, different age groups. So let's just first talk about here's why we're scared. Here's why we don't trust. Here's what we don't understand. Deal with the why, and just shortly deal with the why, and then work on the facts. I'll let the rest of you guys pop in on that one. But I think some kids have never heard of Tuskegee or some of the experiments that were done, or some of the reasons why generations are like, I'm not touching that poison, or other people are saying, but if you go to Africa, don't you have to get certain shots in order to go over there and be an evangelist? All of that. Maybe let's talk a little bit about the why and why there's fear. Let's just maybe that's what I'm thinking would work.
Thank you.
You want to go? We have to have trauma-informed conversations where we understand that the presentation that exists in trauma, specifically racialized trauma, because the apprehension specifically in the Black community is tied to a racial component, right? We have to understand that there's an increased sensitivity and reactivity to medical treatment that's promulgated by mainline culture, right? We have to understand that there's a hypervigilance that's involved in people who experience trauma. The medical community in the United States of America historically has traumatized Black and brown people. Even if we did not see it, it's been passed down to us, not only in our DNA, that apprehension, but in our stories, in the little conversations we hear around the dinner table. Well, I ain't gonna trust that. Well, I got me some root. I'll go get some bush, go put it, whatever it is, right? We've heard it around. So we have to have trauma-informed conversation to let people know, well, why the apprehension is there, and allow people to express how they feel about it. Because the truth of the matter is everyone has to make an informed decision for themselves. However, they have to make sure that they're not acting out of their pain, out of their traumas, and making decisions that will re-traumatize them. So in order to prevent that, we have to enter into the trauma, the pain, the miasma of their racial history, so that they can put that or place that where it properly belongs, so that they can make an informed decision apart from their trauma in their present. We can't do that if we just neglect it or if we don't talk about it. So we have to talk about it. So we have to have trauma-informed conversations with people and let people express, I would tell you what made me get it. I got it because I saw rich white people were paying to get it, and they didn't test it in Africa first. And I was like, well, okay, if rich white people want it, then maybe it's safe. But that's for me. That may not be for other people. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, too late now. Edited out the video.
Here's a story. Some of the science upon which these coronavirus vaccines were developed was built upon an experiment from 1954 to 1973, one of the largest human subject experiments that was done morally and ethically, that included 2,300 Seventh-day Adventist servicemen, Operation White Coat. The vaccines for tularemia and yellow fever and other things that this science was built upon Seventh-day Adventist research, or research on Seventh-day Adventist soldiers.
See, I like that.
Wow.
I don't even recall. I didn't even know that many Adventists were involved in that, and that's why we need to know. We just need to know and not feel as if you are lesser or greater because you think a certain way. That's the part. I love that. I'm taking notes as we've been talking, so I'm writing that down.
And see, to those who have been viewing, now you understand why I called Chaplain Anderson our pillar of wisdom on this panel. He provides that which we need. So no, those were excellent and much needed responses. And one of the main things that came forth from what you all were talking about is being informed and being willing to have discussions. And I know I'm not the only one that's seen, whether in person, a personal setting, or on social media, where we can see these discussions when the vaccination comes up take a whole life of its own. Before you know it, people are threatening each other, they fighting and cussing and everything else based on a decision centered around this thing. But if we can be open to having an informed conversation where we can be enlightened and we can enlighten. And I think it can help us to make more responsible choices and decisions, because also, as we're saying before we move to the next question, what we're also seeing is that life and reintegration and all these things does not stop at the vaccination. There are still responsibilities that are expected of us that we would continue to ensure safety, not only for ourselves, but for those around us. I want to kind of backtrack a little bit to go back to the church context in terms of reintegration. We talked a little bit about the importance of focusing on mental health as we see it in our leaders, kind of strengthening their hand, being a support to them. And we know that when churches and as churches continue to reopen, that there are going to be a host of members who feel comfortable coming back into our churches. They're going to bring with them their own unique experience from this last year and a half. We've all dealt with it in different ways. And there's a lot of stuff that has happened over this pandemic. Grief with loss. People have handled grief differently. People have lost weight during the pandemic, gained weight during the pandemic. People have lost jobs during the pandemic and have gained jobs, have gotten married, have gotten divorced. We see so many things that have taken place this last year and a half. But now all these people, when we do reintegrate, are going to be coming back and flooding these places, bringing with them a whole history of trauma and grief and mental health experiences back into this one setting. What we need to know, panelists, is how churches can go about doing an effective job of setting up support in the local church arena that can help to facilitate, help to cultivate, help to support, whatever word you want to use, people and surrounding their mental health issues. Can you all offer some insight concerning that?
I don't have a church right now, but if I was pastoring a local congregation, having mastered Zoom, where the church went to people, I would still do that. And when we can come back into church, I would want to set up some testimony time, and I would preach hope, hope, hope. And I would want to look at menus for personal development and growth beyond Sabbath school that would allow people to come into groups, to be accountable, to tell their stories, to reintroduce themselves, because this thing has changed all of us.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on that, and I'm going to tell you my dream church. Are you ready for my dream Sabbath in the morning? Here we go.
We're ready. We're ready.
Sabbath school doesn't happen in the church sanctuary at all. Happens in the fellowship hall and outdoors. A round table with a little crackers, a little cheese, a little fruit, a little beverage. And it happens in small little groups, because that's what we have been doing, small groups, church, okay? And that's what Sabbath school looks like. Good discussions. Then somehow, some way, we get called together. Now, I love Hebrew. When I was in seminary, I loved Hebrew, mastered it. I sing in Hebrew, I love it. So I'll get a shofar and blow it and tell them it's time to get into church. And what I would do, we get into church and we walk into church singing. We're not waiting for praise team to sing. We're not waiting for that to, somebody will be up front leading it to keep the key on, because we got to keep the key up, right? I would have them. Now, this is the 11 o'clock hour, and now we're just singing to come into church. There is no processional of those who are going up on top of the pulpit, because we didn't have that, right? We didn't have that for 2 years. So what I would have is, maybe they're leading the people into the church. They're in front, leading them into the church. They go up onto the pulpit and we're singing something like "Onward, Christian Soldiers," and we're all singing. And then the musicians walk in too, but then they get on the piano and the instruments and they start playing, and we open church that way. Then we just pray, and then we have what Chaplain said, the whole testimony time, where we have every Sabbath, we're going to have testimony time. So we're going to have prepared testimonies, or maybe just pop-up testimonies. Sometimes we'll have it on the screen where we can time it, because, Sister Brathwaite or Sister Elephant's going to be up there, or Brother somebody going to be talking for 2 hours. So we want to make sure that we curtail them, but we have testimony time. And each time you look forward to that, because you want to tell a testimony in church. And then after we have that, then we break open the word. When we break open the word, we're preaching in a different way. We're preaching with stuff on the screen showing, because for some, when I preach, I have some pictures up. I got things going. I got, props happening, because there's audio, visual that the kids teach you. They learn in 3 different ways, right? Kinesthetics, they need that. So you do that to your audience. You do that to your congregation. After that happens, you say, all right, we're going to collect offering for those but we're going to collect 2 offerings. One for those who are still working, for tithing offering, those who aren't. So we can get you a little $10 gift card, or $10, $15 gift card for gas, something. So your offering is going not just to your tithe and offering for the local church, but can you give a little extra something, maybe $2, $5, something. The amount is not the issue. It's the fact that you thought about me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're trying to build. And after we do that, we sing a little bit more because I love singing. We do a little bit more singing. Then we make sure that the kids are given the song. So if they want to say "I am a CH" instead of some song in a hymnal, then we all sing their songs and let them know that their songs are just as important, even if it's too childish for some. Let's let everybody join in and have a good time. And after that, we go out, go home, go have little picnics, make sure people can eat, and then come back into church for AY if you want to. And AY is going to look different because young people are doing some really good things. That's what my Sabbath looks like, because then I get to relax and I get to have fun and smile so much, just smile so much, rejoice so much in knowing that God is God. Let's not spiritualize our churches anymore. Let's not make it, not that they were before, but there was no reason to shake things up. Now that we can get the cobwebs out, let's do it that way. So that's my
man. Listen, it sounds like you put some thought into that thing.
I did. I wrote it down.
We appreciate it. David, jump in here, man, on this topic in terms of support.
I want to take it a little bit more globally, and maybe talk about the environment that our churches exist in, right? And church beyond service, right? But services, right? So the first thing is, not every church looks the same. Not every church has the same environment. Not every church is starting in the same place. Some churches are loving. Some churches, broken people can walk into and actually get help instead of condemnation and judgment, right? So if I have a church that condemns people who are broken, I need to start at a baseline level of learning and answering two questions that I'm going to share with you. If I have a church that actually can love on people who are broken, then I can start at a higher level. But here are the two questions. The first question is this: how can I create safety in my church? Safety for people to be vulnerable, safety for people to express their brokenness, safety for people to express their need, right? So the first one, how can I create safety? The next one is, what does healing look like in my church? How do we heal together, right? And once I've just established what that means, it could look many different ways depending on what the church is, right? But the way I see it is, how do we figure out a way, if we have people who suffer from anxiety, depression, have dealt with sexual assault, divorce, who are dealing with grief, how do we find a way for all of these people to get together in community within these spheres and have small groups based off their challenges or their difficulties, so that not only they can support each other, but they can get support from outside? Now, the question is, Defoe, who will lead these groups? Many times in your neighborhood, you have clinicians. I don't care. I don't care if they're Christian or not. Look, you need someone competent. I don't care about the God that they serve. Anyway, find someone who in your neighborhood, in your area, is competent, right? You can, by all means, contact a therapist and tell the therapist, this is what I need. I'm running a depression group, an anxiety group. Is this your bag? Is this your thing? If it's your thing, my church is having an 8-week group, some on Zoom, some in person, don't matter. They're having an 8-week Zoom. I will pay you your session fee to come and run this group. Someone may come in and may do your groups for $150 if their session fee is $150, and they will come in and they would run your anxiety groups, your depression groups, your grief groups, whatever groups you have for mental health, so that you begin to create the environment in your local church where people understand that it's okay for me not to be okay. The second thing is this, right? Many people are going to walk back into their church, and they're going to be people, and this may be my present pain that's talking about this after having lost our president. They're going to be people that are going to walk back in church and see pews that were always occupied by the same mother, father, grandmother, and those pews are going to be empty. Well, how do we get together to grieve in community, have a mass funeral for everyone that we've lost, find a way to support these folk, right? Last thing, in Alleghenies, one thing we do is we offer to all of our churches mental health first aid. If you want your church to be or to get people trained in mental health first aid, the department that I run, we come into your church, we'll do it for you, right? That is a great resource to provide baseline, frontline information to people as to how they can deal with, recognize mental health conditions. It doesn't teach you to solve a problem, but just like first aid will teach you to put a bandage on a wound, mental health first aid helps you recognize people who are struggling with things. And then if you don't have clinicians, if you don't have people who are trained in your church to handle these issues, by all means, go out into your community and develop relationship with an agency, develop relationship with a therapist. Trust me, I'm a therapist. I work for money. Pay them some money, they'll come in and they will help you. But don't shut the door on people who may not have your same biblical understanding or people who may not have your same belief in God. You need the help. You don't care if your doctor, if you have cancer, is Adventist or not. You care that this doctor can help walk you through your challenges. We have to see mental health as regular health, and then we'll change sort of our mindset about how we deal with it and approach it.
Woo! Listen, y'all, if y'all didn't get anything from all of that the three of them just said, then you came here with the wrong mindset. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. Listen, this has been phenomenal. And I'm so grateful that the Lord designed it in such a way where we saved that question for last, because those three comments were probably the best place to kind of land this plane. Chaplain Simona, thank you so much for your expertise, for your illustrious examples of what church would look like in your perfect case scenario. It was beautiful. Dr. Defoe, we appreciate that input that you just gave, making our churches, our places, safe places where you can say, I'm hurting, I'm broken, and not only not find condemnation, but find help and support. Chaplain Anderson, our pillar of wisdom, we are so grateful for your being here with us, for everything that you added to this discussion. It has been a privilege of mine to be on here with you all. And you've seen, if you haven't seen yet, the comment sections have literally been lit up with just affirmation for this particular discussion. And so for our PELC committee and team who put this together, we are so grateful for your help as well. I'm going to give our panelists about 15 to 30 seconds just to share one takeaway. If you were to say, I want a viewer to take this away from this discussion, I want to give each of our panelists 15 to 30 seconds to put the final nail in the coffin, as it were, and excuse that analogy if you're grieving. But one thing I do want to mention before I open up the floor for them to do that is that the next PELC webinar, please mark your calendars, will be on August the 16th. You see it right there on the screen, August the 16th. Reimagining church. Here's our topic. Reimagining church. Best practices moving forward. Chaplain Anderson, there's your futuristic component. Reimagining church. In other words, let's rethink this thing. There may be a better way. I think one thing the pandemic has taught us is that there are better ways to do what we've been doing, more effective ways. That's what we'll be dealing with on August the 16th. So we'll start with our beautiful Chaplain Simona. We'll start with our lady first, because my mother would have it no other way. And then we will go to Dr. Defoe, and we will ask our pillar of wisdom, Chaplain Anderson, to close us out. What is your one takeaway for our viewers today?
Well, I've just been writing down notes, and I'm loving what I've seen and heard from my panelists and even from those that have been commenting. What I believe I'm going to walk away with a better understanding is that when we have pain, we kind of seek out where we're going to get help for that pain. Sometimes the pain is in the mouth, we go to the dentist. Sometimes the pain is in our back, we go to our doctor or a chiropractor. Sometimes the pain is in our head, we go to a mental health specialist. There's no shame in that. And I'm thinking, I'm really grateful for all that I've heard. And I'm going to walk away knowing a couple of things. Mental health is just regular health. And that there are professionals out there that God has ordained with wisdom to help me in that walk. And I'm also going to walk away with being excited about knowing that we're not going to leave anybody behind, that we are going to definitely take an opportunity and a moment to just say, hey, We have a reset button. We just got to do things differently. How is that going to work and bring everybody to the table, including our little ones, the youth, the young, that tweeners? Just bring everybody to the table, even the elderly who could not come to church but have been in church for 2 years because church went to them. So I'm just going to open up my mind and listen a lot better, hear things better, and just understand and grasp that Corona is not the end of, it's the beginning of something amazing and something new. That's my takeaway.
You know, what I want people to sort of get from this conversation is that God calls on us to comfort the broken, the vulnerable, and the hurting. And if we're not doing that, we're not really doing Jesus ministry. So figure out a way to make sure our local environments are conducive to helping the broken, the vulnerable, those that need help. And then realize it's okay to be human and allow other people to be human. And for everyone, listen, if you need help, get help. Don't try to do it by yourself. If you need it, go on and get it. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I need somebody to help me. Y'all have a good day.
My takeaway: take care of yourself. Take care of yourself by asking 2 questions of your faith. First question is why? Why? And the second question, what now? Lord, what would you have me to do? Take care of yourself. Thanks for being here.
To our viewers, and thank you so much to our panelists, excellent takeaways. To all of our viewers, regardless of where you're viewing from and when you view this, we just want to say a huge thank you. This would only be possible with your help. We pray that you were blessed. To our PELC team, those working behind the scenes and others, we thank you for the excellent job that you have done. Lord, we thank you for this awesome and most important discussion that we've been able to have today concerning life after the SNAP. Post-pandemic, what will reintegration look like? And thinking about this in the scope of mental health. If we're being honest today, each of us are broken in some kind of way. We need help, we need healing, we need support. We pray that instead of fighting against one another and our ailments, that we would band together so that each of us, through the help of the Holy Spirit, would receive that which we need. That is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you. Have a great day.